And thank you to all who came out to our water ceremony this morning to bless the water, be blessed by the water, and feed the lake. That was very, very special, so thank you for doing that. And in the theme of sacred Indigenous waters, it is very fitting that I have the honor and pleasure of introducing to you Elizabeth Lindsey. Elizabeth Lindsey is an extraordinary Hawaiian woman of many, many talents. Elizabeth Lindsey's native Hawaiian name, Kapa'uwailani, means heart of heaven. And she is the first Polynesian explorer and the first female fellow in the history of the National Geographic Society. We are making progress. Evolution is happening. Elizabeth is an award-winning filmmaker, a humanitarian who works with United Nations ambassadors on behalf of climate refugees. She's also created scholarships for women and children in India and Hawaii. Her firsthand accounts from the world's most fragile regions provide keen insights critical in navigating the complexity of our times. She is truly an ethno-navigator needed for this current era. Elizabeth earned her doctorate in anthropology, specializing in the Indigenous science of wayfinding, which means navigating without any instruments. On an expedition in 2007, Elizabeth journeyed to the remote island of Satawal, Micronesia. There she recorded the traditions of the Palu, the navigator priests. Her mentor for 10 years was renowned Palu and Grandmaster Navigator Mau Pi'ilug. Pi'ilug was considered the greatest wayfinder in the world. And some of Mau's most important teachings begin in the dark.
We've been here for hours, waiting for the first glint of light on the horizon. It's the way Mau forecasts weather conditions days in advance. Where is the wind? It's a breathless night. There is no wind. Where is the wind? I reach for the slightest sensation across my face, through my hair, look for the trembling of a leaf. I cannot find the wind. Papa, I don't know. Close your eyes. Then you will know. Suddenly I understand. What he is trying to teach me is what we all need to know in times like these. How to pierce the darkness. How to awaken and enliven and heighten our perceptions. The Micronesian Palu were among the greatest wayfinders in the world. So keen were their observations of the natural world that they could sail thousands of miles without instruments, using the rising and setting of stars, the swell and sequence of waves, the flight patterns of certain birds, even the slightest hint of color on the underbelly of clouds informed them. So keen was their ability that when they were out at sea and anticipated violent storms and knew they couldn't get to a safe harbor, they would loosen the lashings on their vessel, allowing for space for the waves to rush in. And then they would tighten themselves and secure themselves to the canoe to ride out the storm. Can you imagine? being tied to wood, knowing that walls of thundering waves would come crashing down upon you. This was, in fact, probably the height of their initiation as navigator. One might wonder what a few remaining elder navigators in a small, remote island that most of the world has never heard of would offer us a sophisticated society. In an age of technological advancement, we are bloated with information, yet starved for wisdom. We are connected 24/7, yet loneliness is at an all-time high. Overwhelmed and exhausted, millions are leading lives of quiet desperation. Our immaturity is reflected in the way that we use our resources. Is it any wonder that we are teetering on the brink of environmental, economic, and social collapse? The fact of the matter is we are trying to find our way. And these navigator priests, as well as cultures throughout the world with their innate wisdom and insight, have a lot to teach us. Our senses have become dull to the wonders of our natural world. We no longer need the stars to guide us to gain our bearings. We have GPS. Emerson said, "If the stars should shine one night in 1,000, men would believe and adore." Unfortunately, we take for granted this nightly brilliance, and we remain transfixed instead to our computers and televisions. As a child, I was raised. My parents were teachers, and during the day left us in the care of 3 extraordinary Hawaiian women that most of the world would pass over because they looked simple and rural and poor. They farmed the land and fished in the oceans, and they were extraordinary. In fact, they were among the most powerful people I have ever known. They could chant the fish toward shore. They knew all of the names of the winds and the rains and spoke to each element intimately, as we would a beloved. They knew our astronomy according to a genealogy of stars. They coexisted intimately with our natural world. They were among the greatest environmentalists, not out of a sense of obligation or duty or desperation, but because they knew that everything is sacred. Everything is sacred. Mao would sometimes say, "The island is the canoe the island." And what he meant was, on board the vessel, resources are finite, and how one crew member uses those resources affects everyone. Well, the planet is our canoe. And how a society, a community, an individual uses the resources affects all of us. There was a prophecy that we grew up with that's common in many cultures throughout the world, and it says, "At the turn of the new dawn, which we know to be the 21st century, the world will be in trouble, and it will take the wisdom from the far edges of the earth to call the world into balance." Well, these women elders, when I was 7, predicted what my future would be. I thought every 7-year-old got called into this talk. And what they said was this: "Baby girl, you will go far away. and it will sometimes be a lonely road, and we will not be there. But you will keep the voices of the ancestors alive. And as you travel, you will look into the eyes of seeming strangers, and you will recognize your ohana, your family, and it will take all of you. It will take all of us. 47 years later, I am going into some of the most remote regions. And around almost every turn, I am inspired by the women and men on the front lines doing extraordinary work in human rights violations, hunger, poverty, climate crisis, peace, and the list goes on, modern-day slavery, and on, and on. And I am strengthened and emboldened by these people who have endured abuses that you and I can hardly imagine. And each time I start to feel low and my bones are tired, all I have to do is think about them. And I know why I am here. And that's why I encourage all of us to awaken what is dormant within us, to shake ourselves out of society's stupor, because we have work to do. Next spring, I leave on an expedition called the Flight of Dreams. We will fly in concert 3 small planes around the world to every continent except Antarctica for 186 days. My intention is to map the human story. It is what UNESCO refers to as our intangible cultural heritage. What does that mean? What does that mean? It is the bamboo forest that becomes the sound of the nose flute. It is the breath within the chants. It is the volcano that inspires the hula, the floating piece of driftwood that informs the navigator priest. This is our intangible cultural heritage, that which cannot be confined to a museum. This is humanity's DNA, and it must be treated with the passion and the conviction to safeguard it the way we do our environmental resources. The urgency of this work cannot be overstated. Throughout the world, elders are dying, and I believe that our elders are our libraries of Alexandria, and each time an elder dies, a library is burned. Throughout the world, libraries are ablaze and few are paying attention. It will take all of us to remember our stories, to begin to record our stories, the stories of our teachers and our elders, the stories of our children who we know are elders in universal time. This is important work, and it will take all of us. Our map that we are going out to gather is to encourage people to tell their own stories. A favorite quote of mine is from Africa, and it says, "Until the lion tells his story, the tale of the hunt glorifies the hunter." Until the lioness tells her own story, the tale of the hunt glorifies the hunter. We must tell these stories. This will be our global memory bank. It will be our digital repository in order to build a bridge to the future. Hawaiians say, "Ikava mua kava hope," and what that means is you cannot know where you are going unless you know where you have come from.
Right. All right.
It's so important that we understand that each of us are responsible to these stories and that we are in this together. This repository will provide a platform for people's stories, for their ability to express themselves through micro-documentaries, oral histories, photographs, maps, text. It doesn't matter. We welcome it all. And we're collaborating with some of the most renowned institutions in the world. It's important because this is the legacy that we will leave for future generations. It's not only because we so desperately need this wisdom and knowledge now, but because we must leave this for children who will never hear the sound of their elders' voices. We live in critical and wondrous times. And like the Palu who lashed themselves to the canoe, this is an invitation for all of us to rise. We can shake in terror over what's going wrong, we know that. Or we can choose to stand up and be fierce together. This is our invitation. It is our prelude to greatness. And we can do it if we do it together. In closing, I'd like to invite you into that place that Mao would take me, into that deep place of knowing. And I would invite us all just for a moment to close our eyes. Whether or not you knew your elders, there is always an ancestor standing beside you. They needn't be from your direct lineage, but they are attending you just the same. Who stands before you in your prelude to greatness? Who stands before you? Invite them closer. And put your forehead to theirs and inhale their knowing. Hawaiians call the breath ha. It is our life force. It is your mana, your power. And breathe into them your gratitude and humility. Know that the answers you seek are always available to you, and you are never alone. Trust your ability to come into the darkness, to close your eyes to see more clearly. Each time you do, you will strengthen your muscles. And as the dawn rises, I would invite you to open your eyes slowly. Look around. You are surrounded by voyagers. The photo behind me is of my mentor, Mao. He passed away 3 months ago. And in his memory, I dedicate these remarks to him. And at times, when I am invited onto a stage such as this, and am filled with anxiety and fear and self-doubt, I want you to remember something, because it's the same thing that I have to remind myself of. Whenever we are willing to step into those uncomfortable places, whenever we are willing to step into our greatness, the ancestors will always meet us there. As Campbell said, if you take one step toward the gods, they will take 10 steps toward you. And so as we journey together, may we know that whatever crises we face is an opportunity for us to define our greatness. It is a prelude to our greatness. And may we always trust our ability to close our eyes to see more clearly.